Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my video series on version 11.2 Build AB6 of HOT2000. This is the newest version of software that HOT2000 has released to energy advisors across the country. It's also, I think, a general version is also available online to the public. This video series is going to be talking about the differences between version 10.51 and version 11.2.86. It's not going to be talking about how to model a house. If you're not an energy advisor and you don't know anything about what I'm talking about, you may not need to know this video because you'll be starting from scratch anyways. But for those of us who've used version 10.51, 9.34, this is an explanation of the differences. So here we go, version 11.2.86, press OK. This video I'm going to be talking about the house screen, which is house, so all the general tabs, info, unit modes, and code summary. I'll also be talking about the program inputs tab and what that's used for. So to get started, this first screen, general screen, no changes between this and 10.51. Username entered, that's your name, so Tom Thumb or whatever you want to put in there. And your service organization name. This is the only one that's going to show up in the reports. Your actual name of the energy advisor who's doing this assessment doesn't show up in any of the reports anymore. It doesn't. The only thing that does show up is the service organization. The energy advisor name and business number and business name will not show up in the reports. So they're only allowing service organization information to show up. So we'll see if that changes in the future. Mixed use is a button that was used before to describe if there was a business within the house. This mixed use button actually no longer works. You can click it on and off, it does absolutely nothing. This information is gathered from program inputs, and we'll talk about that later. Info screen, if you haven't seen my previous video on the wizard, this has been completely revamped from version 10.51. In 10.51, and I think 9.34, you had 10 info fields that you had to choose from. This one has got an unlimited number. To add an info field, you just press add, and you type in your value. You add another one, and you can notice it's going 1, 2. If I add another one, 3, 4. You can, if you don't want to put the number in, or say you need info field 10, which is what a lot of energy advisors need right now, you can write in 10, sort of jump the queue a little bit, enter in your PF, which is required for file submission, and then you have the information there instead of going all the way through and adding all the info fields. If you were going to do that and say you wanted some other ones, you can go down. It'll stop you at number 10 because it knows it doesn't want a duplication of number 10, and it'll give you a warning that you must name it something else. I'm going to name it number 6 because that's one I missed from before. And anyways, these info fields, as you can see, there's quite a few of them. There we go. Oh, I had put 2 6s in there. Anyways, these things here, there is an unlimited number of info fields now. If you want info field 237, you're allowed to do that. It'll just keep on going and going, adding more and more as you require it. You don't have to keep them as info field 3. If you want to rename them, you can. You can call it email address. Oops. Email address, and then put the information that way. The email address, the text there will actually be saved within the TSV. It won't be saved as info field 3. That actually changes to email address within the TSV. So it's kind of a handy feature. Allows us to collect extra information if we so want, and it just gives us more options. Specification screen, essentially the same as it was in 10.51 with a few more caveats. In 10.51, we had to describe how many stories there were. We had to describe whether it's double, whatever, semi, single detached, rectangular, plan shape. We didn't really use. Orientation we needed, so you could put the orientation of the house down there. We required year built, and that was pretty much all we needed. In HOT2000 version 11, or with this build, or I think it's called 15 or such, they now require wall color. So if you have an uninsulated section of your house, you actually have to say, well, the outside is red because it's red brick, and now I've got that. And this will actually be applied to the entire house, this color. So even if only one section of your house is red, this red color gets applied to the whole thing, but it really actually does affect the heat gained from an uninsulated wall. Roof color we can leave as default, and we want to default the roof cavity inputs. We have this new thing called above grade heated floor area and below grade heated floor area, and this is essentially the floor area of the house. If I've got 1,000 square feet on the main floor and 1,000 square feet on the second floor, then this becomes 2,000. If I have 1,000 square feet in the basement, this becomes 1,000. These numbers have an impact. They affect the energy intensity on the label, which we'll get to later. It also affects the Q warning, so make sure that this is accurate. The only time this will be less than your floor area is when you have sort of like an open area, where it's like a great room where you have one room expanding out to both the main floor and the second floor. When you don't have a second floor, or it's basically open, this will be reduced, but otherwise this will be pretty much the same area of your house. Weather, the only really difference here, we've got depth of frost line. This is only for people in the future. There may be code compliance issues with the depth of frost line. Right now, I think we just leave it blank. The weather file itself has changed. It's now 110. I think the last one was 100 from 1051. Fuel costs, you can put your fuel costs in here. Enercan's removed fuel costs entirely from the reports and such. The only time you can actually use fuel cost now is with the energy savings calculator. You can put this information if you want. Units in mode, this is the same, where I have metric imperial. And before we used to have a choice of, I think it was 5 or 6 different units. We could do general, we could do enter guide for houses, enter guide for new houses, R2000, and I think there was like one for the England there too. Anyways, now we only have 2 choices, general and enter guide rating system. We're going to choose enter guide rating system because that's what I'll be covering here is the EA side of things. You'll notice that when I change this, the program inputs, this is general, and I have no access to it. If I'll go back to units and mode. If I switch to enter guide rating system, this changes to enter guide rating system, and now I have access to these points. So, oops, yeah, I'm going to turn it off for now. Units and mode, general. Okay, so window tightness, same as it was before. You can choose the window tightness. Code summary, these are the codes that you've used in the house to identify parts of the house, and you can choose whether to copy them into the code library or not. So let me go back to change this to enter guide rating system. We can do it here. We can also do it with the button up at the top. So general mode, or I can choose enter guide rating system up here. I will do that, and we'll see that the enter guide rating system menu option is available, and that's what I'm going to be talking about next. So we'll do it here. They've got this nice thing over here, indicate presence of vermiculite. It's off the edge of the field. I'm just going to put it to vermiculite. I'm not sure why it's all the way out to the right. It would be so nice if it just moved over here somewhere so I don't have to keep enlarging my screen every time. But what can you do? So this screen we have, I guess, apply household operating conditions, atypical energy loads, water conservation, reduce operating conditions, reference house, and the vermiculite. Vermiculite has to be identified with every energy rating system. As you saw that message before, it said I didn't have vermiculite chosen. Make an option, and that's just a catch to make sure that you're actually going to write that down. I think we had the same sort of thing in 1051. So I'm going to do atypical energy loads first. This is things that are not included in the rating of the house, but that we still have to identify. So I go on here. So de-icing cables, there's the cables up on the roof to stop ice damming. Heated garage, so in 1950s houses, typically there's a heat and vent into the garage. You can click off heated garage. Hot tub, do they have a hot tub? Extensive exterior lighting, swimming pool, and oh, look at this, non-residential occupancy mixed use. This is where we now identify the mixed use, not the down here, this little checkbox thing does nothing. So you want to make it in atypical energy loads, right there, that's where we do our mixed use. We also have room air conditioner, which are not included in the label, but you can put down how many units there are and how many Energy Star units there are. Okay, if I fill them all out, if I decide I made a mistake and I actually didn't have them all, instead of going to the tab and unchecking them, I can just uncheck it here and the thing disappears. So now we have apply household operating conditions. This is sort of if when you're doing an upgrade report, if there's specific temperatures and number of occupants that you want to identify for the household to get a more accurate, or I'll put that in brackets, more accurate sense of how much energy is used in their house, you can do the set number of occupants. So say you've got 7 people in the house, 2 kids or 2 adults and 5 kids. You can change the daytime to nighttime cooling system, and then different options there. So this will show up in the upgrade report only. It doesn't show up in the homeowner information sheet, and it doesn't show up in the label. This is only for the upgrade report. So I'm going to go back here on main. I'm going to unclick it because you've seen it. Water conservation. This is actually needed for the base case. I'm not sure why it's always out here. Even if you're doing a basic service, you still have to observe the number of toilets that are low flush toilets are in the house. And then for the upgrade, I want to do 3 toilets, and that means it'll say add 1 toilet to the house. So even though this is not checked off as default, it is mandatory when you're doing the basic service. So then the next one we have apply reduce operating conditions. This is only to be used if the house is a net zero house. If you can get the house down to a 0 rating with this tab, then you're allowed to use it. If you can't get the house down to 0, you're not allowed to use it. Again, not really sure why. It would be nice to have this option for all houses, but this is Enercan rules. So lighting, basically 25 to 75, greater than 75 CFL. These are sort of some of the options that they used to have with, or I guess that they still do with Energy Star houses. So if you've done that kind of testing, you'll probably recognize some of this stuff. Closed dryer, this is the default value of the dryer and all the appliances. If you have specific information that says this is how much energy that they use, basically you've got a photocopy of their EnerGuide rating label, then you can change these to whatever value it says on the label. Energy Star, clicking these things actually does nothing for electricity. It reduces water consumption or hot water consumption within the HOT2000 modeling. Again, hot water, bathroom faucets, shower heads. This stuff, again, Energy Star applies only to the water consumption, not to the electricity consumption. So back to main, I'm going to unclick that one. Reference house is also something. This is basically a tab. We're not really supposed to change anything on here. This will be more for maybe a province that you are working for or working in will have certain requirements for this. As of right now, with current procedures, don't touch. So I'm going to go back to main. I'm going to click off the reference house. The last one that I have, so we've got main, we've got all these buttons here, is RUR comments. Now, if we are making an upgrade report in 1051, you would do natural air leakage, do an upgrade, you click on energy upgrade, and you'd have a tab here for your report. You'll notice it's gone. So I'm going to get rid of this. Where we have it now is actually EnerGuide rating system. We have comments here. So this is basically the screen allows you to write in your comments for AirScene for all the different components. The ... which is almost cut off on the edge of the screen. Basically that opens it up into a text box so you can write in your recommendations for each individual improvement. This doesn't get saved between files, so what I'd recommend is people use a Word file, have sort of a master list there where you can copy and paste some of your comments into here, because you will be writing all your comments every single file. I think it's Enercan's way of making sure that you actually are writing in some comments. So that's essentially it. I'll bring it back to the house. So these are essentially the differences between with these two, with house and with EnerGuide rating system when in build version 11 to 86. The next videos I'm going to be talking about some of the other issues, ceiling, main floor, basement, stuff like that. Please come back and see the videos. If you have any questions, please send me an email at the email listed below. Thank you.